It's in the first chapter of Atomic Habits where James makes it very clear that what sets successful people apart is not their ability to dream big dreams, their ability to be ambitious or to set goals, but rather their ability to create systems of habits, systems of actions, right? And if you really think about it, you are where you are today, not because of the dreams or goals that you had in the past, but rather the actions that you took in the past. And it's the actions that you take today that are going to determine where you land up tomorrow. So that's exactly what we're going to be discussing today, how to start taking action and stop delaying your dreams and ambitions. Obviously, this is the first episode, so let's take a minute to introduce the podcast and what we do here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Growth Assignment Podcast. I'm your host, Hwande, and I'm very excited to be taking you all along this journey of creating a growth-focused podcast to inspire and elevate you to take action and do the things that will lead you to a happier, healthier, and more meaningful life. We are here for growth. Now, I'm not perfect, and this podcast is not going to be perfect. It is, however, going to be authentic. I'm here to seek progress and not perfection. I know I'm not an expert or with years of experience when it comes to personal growth, but what I do know is that over the years, I've taken the time to purposefully learn, grow, and expand wherever I can. And I wouldn't be living my truth if I wasn't sharing my experiences and elevating others. With that being said, though, life is about doing you the best way you know it. You don't know anybody an explanation or reason. So here I am at 19 years old living my truth. It's not going to be easy, but I know it's what I need to do. The growth assignment is not here for theory, but rather a pragmatic, down-to-earth and realistic approach to growth. We're here to awaken your curiosity and enter the future feeling as confident and as prepared as possible. We aren't here to watch the world evolve around us, but to do things, to make things happen and become the people that in the deepest of our hearts we know we ought to become. This podcast is for the doers, those that are willing to learn, to grow, and most importantly, willing to take action. This podcast is for you. My mission is to inspire, elevate, and empower you with the right tools to achieve growth. If you're willing to put yourself out there, give yourself a shot, and put in the work, then you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Growth Assignment Podcast. I'm your host, Hwande, and let's get the show started. Thank you for tuning in, and let's get right into it. How to start taking action and stop delaying your goals and ambitions. Step 1. Seek progress and not perfection. We live in a very fast-paced world, one where at any given moment, I'm sure you can think of the many things that you have to tick off your to-do list, or maybe that one big task that's been weighing you down or keeping you busy. And when you mix that with just our human nature of trying to be perfect at everything, things don't always work out in our favor. Because if you try and be perfect at everything, you're not going to be good at anything. It's almost like we forget that it's called a to-do list and not a to-be perfect list. The key to prioritizing progress over perfection is to focus on getting the core work done first and building from there. What I mean by core work is in anything that you want to do, there's always that one key action that if you get that done, only then can you tick the item off your to-do list, right? Only then can you consider the thing a done. I'll use an example for business. You can have employees, a great office building, you can have the world's fanciest websites, social media accounts, all that stuff. But without offering a product or service to customers, you aren't a business. If you want to become a runner, you can buy the world's fanciest shoes, you can get the world's greatest gear, but if you don't go out and actually run, then you aren't a runner, right? So it's that core work that leads to progress. And what often happens is because we live in such a fast-paced world, we are always moving from one thing to the other. And what happens is that our focus shifts a lot. Right, we're always moving from one thing to the next, and we're just constantly trying to get everything done that we don't specify to ourselves that what's the core work? Because guess what happens when you do all the other work besides the core work? You don't make any progress. Imagine wanting to start a YouTube channel, you get the YouTube account, and you get your banner, you get your social media accounts ready, you got everything ready. But then the thing that you don't do is start creating content and start posting content. Every other work, all the things that you've done are useless without the core work. You have to do the core work because all the other work complements the core work. And so when you want to focus on progress and when you want to start taking action, be very clear what the core work is. Start taking actions towards getting that core work done. Because when you get that core work done, only then can you start looking to make things better. You can't paint a house to make it pretty if the house isn't built yet. You have to get the core work done. I recently read the book, or rather listened to the book Indistractable by Nir Eyal. And one concept that he mentions is that of traction and distraction. Now, traction is when you're doing actions or work that leads you towards your specified goal. And distraction is, listen very carefully, distraction is anything that does not lead you towards your goal, regardless of how positive, how beneficial, or how productive it might seem. And so, what that means is that distractions aren't just things like, oh, just scrolling on your phone. But if you know that right now I'm supposed to be doing this piece of work and this is what I set out to do because this is what will help me to get to where I want to get to, if you start doing other work for whatever reason and you start breaking that promise that you'd made yourself, then you are being distracted. Oftentimes, you find that core work is the hard stuff. That's the stuff that's not pretty, the background stuff that the people never see. But all that other work, that's the pretty stuff. The front end where everyone gets to see, where everyone claps hands, the stuff that's just enjoyable. Most of the time, that's the case. And the danger of seeking perfection is that it's the other work that makes the core work seem perfect. And so what happens is that because we're seeking perfection, we're always looking to improve and spend our time on the other work and not the core work itself. We then forget that without the core work, everything else is useless, right? If it's a podcast, yes, you can have a great website to go along with your podcast, great social media community, yet you don't upload any podcast episodes, you haven't done anything. You cannot be perfect first. You have to do and then you have to improve. Because progress leads you to excellence and perfection, not the other way around. An analogy I can use is that of running a 100-meter track race. On the track, the start line is very clearly marked, and the track is measured. There's 8 lanes, and let's say you have 8 different versions of you on racing, on one in each lane. You have 8 different versions of you. There's 8 different outcomes. Each one based on whatever decisions you make. The version of you in lane 1 is that person who just wants everything to be perfect. And so because you want everything to be perfect, you obviously, when the gun goes, you don't just want to start running. So what you do is now you add all these conditions, all these tasks, all this extra work that you see as like, this is fit for it to happen before I start running, right? So what that is basically doing is you are now taking that start line at 0 meters and you adding your own start line at minus 10 meters. Now your race is 110 meters because you see the stuff between -10 and 0 as very important. You have just increased your race length. When the gun goes, the other 7 versions of you, they're going to get going from 0. Whatever happens from there, they're going to learn. Whatever happens from there, they're going to figure it out. But guess what? That person who's in lane number 1, Mr. or Mrs. Perfect, that person now has to run 110 meters. And again, we said one of 2 possible outcomes, right? Well, the first one's very clear, right? Delayed action. because by the time the gun goes off, a few seconds, your buddies are already almost halfway through the race. Well, guess what? You just crossed the actual starting line. You only now just started with the core work. Only now are you starting to make progress that you could have made before if you just believed in yourself and made zero excuses. The second is that of the lack of action. So, what happens a lot of the time is we create all these conditions of success, all these things that we say we have to do before we start, that sometimes the stuff that we create for ourselves is just so difficult. And the conditions that we create for ourselves are a lot harder than doing the actual work. And it becomes so hard that you end up quitting and never actually do the work. You don't get to make actual progress. And this could be for many different reasons. It could be because of self-doubt, that now because you can't do these conditions that you set for yourself, you don't think you can do the actual work. You don't think that you're worthy. Or it could be you just get burnt out. And you have to be honest with yourself. Like, what are the small excuses that you are telling yourself that this needs to be done before you can do the work? Because that's the stuff that you have to look out for. That is the stuff that is keeping you away from making progress, because you tell yourself it's important. And I can let me tell you this, in the moment when your mind is telling you those excuses, it just seems so real. Andy Frisella refers to this as your bitch voice, right? It's that little voice inside your head that when the moment comes to do the work, it will tell you that, okay, no, you'd rather do this is better. And in the moment, it's just like so real, and it's making so much sense that no, let me work on this because this will be beneficial. It'll help me make this, and it'll help me make this. It's just like this great plan that you form in your head. But the truth is, when you're creating that great plan, you're just thinking in a straight line, man. It's just like a straight line to reaching this goal, but that's not how life works. We all know that life never works in a straight line. It's always detour after detour after detour, right? But you can't think with the detours because you don't know what detour is coming. And so you just have to get started, start moving, and then you take all the redirections as they come. And so the key to seeking progress and not perfection is just getting started with the core work and building from there. The second step to starting to take action is overcoming self-doubt. Now, there's times where self-doubt is very easy to pick up and you realize it, but then there's also times where it's not so easy to pick up, right? And an example of this is, again, when you're adding extra conditions and extra steps that have to be completed before you start to take action. And the reason why I say this is because a lot of the time it's because you have an underlying belief that you aren't capable of achieving and starting in your current state. You think that the extra steps will elevate you to a better position, will elevate you to a better state where you will then, only after those extra conditions, you will then be capable of achieving whatever you've set out to achieve. And this is all because of the underlying belief that you aren't capable right now, the underlying belief that you in your current state cannot do, and that is just self-doubt. You really need to take action, and as we discussed earlier, you need to get going with the core work. That is the only way you'll see actual progress. That is the way you'll see progress, because what those extra steps are doing is just entertaining that underlying self-doubt. It's that productive procrastination that's seeping through as traction. Meanwhile, it really is just distraction. Now, that's the underlying self-doubt. Then there's that self-doubt that's quite easy to pick up, right? And the solution to that would depend on how that self-doubt came about, right? And whether you can tell how it came about. So simply, if it's self-doubt that's being instilled in you by someone else or by some third party, then the simple thing would be to cut out the noise. Cut that person off, right? Cut that. If it's social media, stop visiting that site, that page, or cut out the entire social platform. Cut out the outside noise. and focus on yourself, your internal story. And we'll get to the story that you tell yourself very soon. But maybe sometimes it's not that simple because you can't cut out that outside noise. Maybe it's someone who you simply can't cut out, like your boss, a parent, a sibling, spouse, somebody who you just feel like you can't cut out. Then that becomes more of a mental game of realizing that this person is not out to help me grow, right? If someone is not looking out for your best interests, there is no reason to value their opinion. And you just need to train yourself mentally to cut them out. So if you can't actually cut them out on the outside, you cut them out on the inside. So now let's get into when the self-doubt stems from the inside, right? There's no third party instilling it in you, but it's just self-doubt that you have inside you. And the first thing that I would say is to see the positive in your current situation. We all have different perspectives, and I can tell you now, what is positive to you can be negative to someone else, and what is negative to you can be positive to someone else. You just have to train yourself to start seeing more of the positives. Ignore the limitations. Don't focus on what you can't do, but rather focus on what you can do, right? Even starting this podcast, there's many ways to look at it. I'm a 19-year-old here talking about growth. What do I know? What story do I have to tell? I don't have any experience. I have no expertise, but I also have an opinion. I also have a life story. Be it short, it's still a life story. I also have experiences. I can also think, right? And there's many ways to look at it. And I could have let that just be something that was like, okay, don't start this podcast. Don't do this. But no, there's positives to any side. And you have to start seeing that for yourself. Start looking to the positives, because one thing that we do is we always looking to become better, and what that leads us to doing is to focus more on what we can get, right? We don't focus on what we have. Sometimes you just have to take a break and look at, wow, this is what I've got and I need to make full use of this, not just to be caught up in the chase the whole time. Because when you do that and you focus too much on what you don't have, it's very hard to appreciate and to be resourceful with what you have. So start seeing the positive in your current situation. Especially if you're someone filled with self-doubt, start looking inwards and start seeing the positives in your life. Start looking inwards before you look out into the world. Because for as long as you're losing the internal battle in your mind, you will never win the outside battle of the world. You have to be winning internally. You have to be seeing the good in your life, not just the bad. Let's talk about fear. Being afraid. Because from time to time, we all doubt ourselves. We all feel scared. But you have to have the courage to take action. A lot of the times we look out into the world, we see people who have done all these amazing things, and it seems like they just went for it and things just clicked for them and they never had moments that scared them. That's not true. Everyone has moments of self-doubt. Everyone has moments where they feel so scared, where they're so afraid of what could become. The ability to be afraid but still take action, that is called bravery. And you need bravery to succeed. And the thing with bravery is that you will look back at times and you will wonder, how did I do that? How did I get through that? And it's just like that, oh, that's wow. It's just wow. How did that even happen? That, my friends, is called bravery. The other thing when it comes to self-doubt, and this is very important, is being very aware of the story that you tell yourself. I'm talking about the internal story, the stories that are happening in your mind, because we all tell ourselves something. And here's the thing, if you constantly telling yourself the story that you aren't capable, the story that you are not worthy, the story that everything just works out badly for you, then that will happen. That will actually happen. Like, that story that's happening inside your head is the story that's going to happen in your outside world. And I'm not talking about seeing the world internally as all just smooth, as everything positive. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just being honest with yourself and choosing to see the positive when things are positive. You are capable. Regardless of whether you have things to show for it, you are capable. And now is your chance. If you don't have things to show that you are capable of doing anything that you set your mind to, then create those things. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to watch out for the story that you tell yourself, because the danger often lies in a lack of self-awareness, in not being aware of the story that you tell yourself. Because if you aren't aware of that story, then you'll never be able to change it. We all start from somewhere. And there's nothing wrong with having a negative story if you realize it. That's just the first step to bringing change. That is the first step to changing that negative story, is realizing that that is the story you tell yourself. So if you pick that up, or if you have just small stories that you keep replaying in your mind that aren't helping you grow, that aren't helping you become the person that you want to be, remove those stories from your mind. Write new stories. Write new stories of your courage, of your bravery, of your discipline. Write new stories of your vision, of how relentless you are in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire. Write new stories of how great a human being you are and how capable you are of anything that you set your mind to. And when you write those stories, go out into the world and put them in action, right? It's not just about telling yourself and having this whole story in your head and then a whole story happening outside. When you envision a story, do your best to make that story a reality. Because one thing that you don't want is to have a completely different world in your head and on the outside for many months and years, right? Now, I'm not talking about stop envisioning the good things, but there's no point in envisioning the good things, in envisioning your success, if you're not going to work for it. Because what's going to happen is you're going to see yourself in this elevated position. You're going to see yourself achieving all these things. But because you don't work for it, time will go by. Months will go by. Years, decades will go by. And then you will just stop and start thinking one day, I'm not this person that I tell myself I am. And that story will just flip. And instead of this awesome person who's capable, it becomes, I'm a horrible person and I'm not capable. And the danger of that situation is now you've built a whole story of how you aren't capable because you don't work. And now you have to start all over again in telling yourself a new story, and you have to back that story up with new evidence, right? So don't wait months, don't wait years. Start today. If you realize that the story that you're telling yourself is not the one that you should, and is not one that leads to your growth, start changing that story right now and start creating new evidence to back up that story right now. The story that you need to tell yourself is that of someone with a growth mindset, is that of endless possibilities, is that of self-belief. Like, you want your self-belief to be so great that it's just so hard to explain to other people. It's just like you just can't explain it to someone else. Because the truth is, you are capable. But you're only capable of great things if you believe that you're capable of great things. When it comes to self-doubt, One thing that I do when I feel like I need some inspiration is looking at the stories of people that inspire me when they were in my current position or state or age. And I find that to be quite motivational, quite inspiring to see someone go from where you are or a very similar position and then go out and do great things. So that's something that you can do as well, and I highly recommend. But just make sure that it's a person you can trust, because some people will just try and make it appear as if things were always good. But remember, at the end of the day, you are out here to write your own story. And if someone else's story does not help you become who you want to become, then that story doesn't matter to you. It's irrelevant to your life. And you shouldn't pay any attention to it. Because we all start somewhere, and there is always room to grow. You can grow out of your self doubt. Just take action and watch it happen. Part 3 of starting to take action is cutting out productive procrastination. Now, productive procrastination, personally, I think is one of the most dangerous things. Why? Because it's productive, right? It gives you a sense of fulfillment and you feel like you're on the right track. Meanwhile, you're not. It's very, very misleading. And I feel it's worse than procrastination, because with normal procrastination, as soon as you finish it, you realize, or sometimes even during the action, you know that, okay, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. But with productive procrastination, it can take time until you realize that actually I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. And sometimes by the time that you realize it, it's so late that it actually leads to so much stress. It leads to self doubt, and it eventually leads to you not taking action because you've done so much work already and you aren't seeing any results, or you feel tired that you've done so much work, but the work feels worthless now that you look at it because you haven't done the core work. You haven't done the important bit, you've just been productive, but productive on the wrong things. And I'm going to bring us back to that definition of traction and distraction by Nia Eyal. Traction being any work that takes you towards your goal, and distraction is any work that is not taking you towards your goal, regardless of how productive it may seem. With productive procrastination comes this feeling that you're on the right track, and I feel that's what destroys us, man. Is you feel like you're doing the right things, you feel like you're making so much progress, you have so much energy, and you often enjoy it so much. Like you're having fun and you're telling yourself, damn, I'm really enjoying the process and I'm working towards something. Meanwhile, you're really just distracted. For myself, a time that I had so much procrastination that was productive was in February when I launched my blog. I told myself that no, I can't launch this blog with just one piece of writing. I have to have 3, 4 blogs, right, at launch. And what this ended up doing was causing a major delay, because by the time that I went live with a few blogs, I'd already made changes to the website so many times to the design. And fun fact, the design that actually went live on my website was one that I created 24 hours ago before the website launched. I had scrapped the previous design so many times. I had so many revisions and so many complete redesigns in that time because I just wanted things to be perfect. And guess what? I was being productive. Why? Because I'm creating so much content that when my audience visits this blog, they already have a lot of content to go through and they already have a good looking website to go through. Meanwhile, it's not just about the quantity. It's not just about the look. It's about the value that the audience receives from it. Even if it's just one blog, if it's a really good blog, a very valuable blog, that's enough. That's a start. We spoke about it in the beginning, is just get the core work done. A blog just needs a single blog, you put it out, and then you work on improving from there. And I realize now that that was just me being lazy and being afraid of actually putting myself out there. I wanted things to be so perfect that I added all these extra steps. and procrastinated my way through. Because I can promise you this, if I just launched with that single blog and then I went on to write 4 more blogs while that first one was out, I would have wrote 4 blogs a lot quicker than I actually did the launch itself, because having to do 4 blogs led to extra work on the website, led to extra planning, led to more work, led to more delays. And that was just productive procrastination, because in the time of doing all that extra planning, all those extra revisions, I was feeling good, man. I felt like, yes, I'm on top of things. I'm getting things done. But it was only after that I realized. And so what I just want to leave you guys with is just take note of these times when you are actually distracted and it feels like it's traction. Productive procrastination often comes in the form of planning. Man, planning is the best thing in the world. Personally, I love planning, and generally I could plan all day. But what is a plan without action, right? What good is a plan without action? Because you can do all the planning in the world, but with zero action, there's not going to be a good outcome. You will not get the desired outcome. It's only through action that we can change things. And here you just have to start doing the work. One thing that I highly recommend that I'm also trying to put into place is to forget all that extra planning. Plan until you can take action, and then start taking action, and then continue planning from there. Don't plan to have everything figured out, because again, as we said before, life does not happen in a straight line. Progress is not a straight line. There will always be redirections. Life will always throw something at you, and you'll need to come up with a plan B. So don't waste time planning. Imagine planning for weeks, months, or even years for something, and then you start to take action. There's a minor detour right in the beginning, and then the rest of your plan becomes completely irrelevant. 99% of what you've planned for, all that time that you felt was being productive, all of it wasted, just like that. The focus is to take action, and then if there's any planning needed afterwards, you plan while you're taking some sort of action, not just sitting and planning and not doing anything. Because it's only when you do that you can become. Not when you plan, you become. No, when you do, you become. How many ideas, ambitions, or just general things have you spent a lot of time planning for, but just never started or got around to doing? If your answer is like mine, and it's countless number, like a lot, right? Then let's make a commitment today, my friend, to stop over planning and focus on becoming people that do. Because what sets successful people apart is their ability to take the right actions that lead them to their goal. Part 3 to how to start taking action and stop delaying your goals and ambitions. Here are 2 things that you, me, and everyone around us have in common. 1. We all take action. 2. We all have wants and desires. Now, the first one is we all take action. We all take some sort of action on a daily basis. Whether that's listening to a podcast, scrolling through social media all day, is starting a business, going to sleep, getting into your car, going for a run, writing a book, studying. Those are all actions. Some more productive than others, some more beneficial than others, some healthier than others, but they are all actions. And the game of life is not just take action because everyone takes action, but it's about being intentional with the actions that you take, because it's what you do that determines who you become and where you land up. And so with that being said, it's very important that the actions and things that you do, you are very intentional, right? At the beginning of the podcast, I mentioned that this podcast isn't just for people who want to watch the world evolve around them, but rather for people who are willing to learn, people who are willing to grow, and people who are willing to take action. And you have to be willing to be intentional with the actions that you take. It's all about putting yourself out there and trying things and doing things and getting shit done, right? It's a game of keeping the promises that you make to yourself. When you say, I'm going to wake up at this specific time and I'm going to get this, and this ticked off my to-do list, it's about getting that done, being intentional with your actions. It's about creating your own to-do list, choosing what you think is the best for you. It's about choosing what you think is the best action and getting those actions done. It's about ticking off a to-do list that is very intentional, not just a generic to-do list that society has handed you. Because guess what? A lot of the things that are just handed to us that we don't see the value of, we often don't do those things, or if we're forced to do those things, we don't do them well because we just don't care. And that's why it's important that you set your own targets, you set your own goals, and you choose the things that you're going to do. Because it's only when you do that will you have those moments of motivation, those moments of inspiration, those moments of desire, those moments of truly wanting something and being willing to take action. So if you're having times where you just don't feel like doing anything, ask yourself, is this important to you? And is this worth it? Because if it's worth it, then do it. If it's important to you, do it. You have to be intentional with the actions that you take. There's a quote up in my room that says there's a difference between playing to not lose and playing to win. That's very important in the actions that you take. Are you all defense or are you playing offense? Protect yourself. Protect what you got. We are here to play on the offense, to win, to make shit happen, to set a target of I'm going to work for this, to set a target of I'm going to do this, and then going after it, then making it happen, and being intentional with the things that we want to see happen, being intentional with the actions that we set out to take. Because you don't want to just be that person who's doing everything, right? You can't do anything and everything that comes your way. Like every opportunity, you just jump on it regardless of whether it's getting you to where you want to be. If you do that, then you'll never arrive because every one action will take you in this direction, the other will take you in this direction, the other in this direction, and you don't actually end up making progress in the direction that you want to go in, and you don't land up where you actually want to be because you're being pulled in 30 different directions. You have to be intentional with what you do. So when you want to start taking action, make sure that this action is important and actually gets you to where you want to be. The actions that you want to start taking, they have to have some meaning in your life. They have to have meaning and value to getting you to where you need to get to. Part 4 of how to start taking action and stop delaying your goals and ambition is realizing that motivation comes after action. Even though I'm running and training every single day, it's not every day that I feel very excited to go out for a run. It's not every day that I lace up and I feel on top of the world. Some days I get out just because I've built the discipline. But I can tell you this, after 99.9% of my runs and training sessions, that's when I feel most motivated to get back into the gym. That's when I feel most motivated to go for another run. It's realizing that because you took a certain step, because you took a certain action, you are now closer to your goal than you were before that action. And that motivates you to take another action to become closer. You get addicted to the progress. And so if there's ever a time where you're feeling down, where you feel unmotivated and you're out there seeking motivation, remind yourself that motivation comes after action. Give yourself 2 minutes to just start the thing, Just get started on the thing, watch yourself do it, and see how you feel afterwards. Again, it's not just after any action, it's after taking the right action. Part 5 of how to start taking action and stop delaying your goals and ambitions. The habit of taking action. I'm so happy right now because even just thinking about this makes me so excited. Like, creating the habit of taking action can be the most beautiful thing. This world needs its innovators. It needs its doers, its movers and shakers, people that get things done. And that person, that can be you. That person, that is you. The fact that you've made it this far into the podcast tells me and is confirmation to yourself that you aren't just here to watch the world evolve, but you're also here to take action, to make your dreams come true. You care about taking action and you want to learn how best you can take action. And I can tell you now, getting into creating the habit of taking action is probably one of the best decisions that we could all make in our lives. And it is something that I hope one day I can listen to this podcast episode and be able to say that, man, since that episode, I've been able to master the habit of taking action. The reason why this is very important is because doing anything once rarely ever brings about results. But it's when you do something consistently that you start to see results. But it's not just about input is equal to output, you get results, yay, it's all good. A lot of the things that you work for, especially work for in the long term, you want to sustain, right? It's not just about creating something, but being able to sustain it. And in order to sustain, you have to keep doing. And that is why the habit of taking action is very, very important. I first read Atomic Habits by James Clear last year, and one thing that he stresses very early on in the book is the importance of frequency. And the best way to creating this habit of taking action is just constantly taking action, right? It's about getting things done. It's about saying, I'm going to do this, and then you just do it. So what I'm not suggesting here is that you create a to-do list with 100 tiny actions each day and you just tick them off. No, of course, you need to have a good combination of the big actions, the small actions, because you don't want to live a life of just ticking off small actions, like 10 years of just ticking off the small to-do list. No, you want a good combination, you want a good balance. So start creating and start getting done. The best and quickest way to build the habit of taking action is to start taking action and take action as often as you can. Start creating the habit of taking action, because you only have to do it a certain number of times until you get used to just doing things and you just get used to taking action. So you just wake up each day and you're like, what must I do? But not just like, what must I do in the sense like, oh no, what do I have to do? It's more like, what can I do? And what am I going to do? And that quickly, what am I going to do, quickly becomes, this is just what I've done, and let me move on to the next thing. And you just become that person who just does things and makes things happen. How great would it be if you were that person who would just one day have a vision that, I want to do this, I want this to happen. And then just naturally, because it's who you are, because you are a person who just has this habit of taking action, in a few days, weeks, months, years, however long it should take, you achieve the thing. It just gets done. And the effort you put in is less than that of the average person, because you just, in the habit of taking action. And the effort you put in was effort that you just naturally felt compelled to take, because you've built this habit of taking action. It just felt like it was you. It felt right, doing all these things, taking all the action, taking all the necessary action just felt right. It was in your blood. It was work, but it didn't always feel like it was work. How beautiful would that be? That you can become that person. And it all starts right now. It starts with you. And the way to create that habit of taking action is to increase the frequency at which you take the right actions, being the actions that take you towards your goal. That is how you build the habit of taking action. Now, for a quick recap of the key points discussed today. 1. The key to prioritizing progress over perfection is to start doing the core work and build from there. 2. In order to overcome self-doubt, you have to cut out the outside and the internal noise. Be aware of the story that you tell yourself and build and be very intentional with the story that you tell yourself. 3. Cut out productive procrastination. Ensure that the actions that you take are those of traction and not distraction. Because what sets successful people apart is the ability to take actions that lead them towards their goal. 3. In order to be successful and achieve your goals, you have to realize the importance of being intentional with your actions. Don't just do things for the sake of doing them, but be very intentional with the actions that you take. 5. In order to create the habit of taking action, you have to increase the frequency at which you take the correct, desired action that leads you towards your goal. Before I close off, I just want to leave you with one last message, and that is one action could change your life. One action could guarantee your success. One action could change your trajectory and lead you towards where you're meant to be. It is one action that could set you up for success. But you'll never know what action that is until you get moving, until you start taking action. So get out there and start doing the things that you know you ought to do. That is the key to success. Go out there and let's get to that action. Sometimes you have to take 100 steps before you get to that action, sometimes 1,000, sometimes 1,000,000 steps. But when you take that action, everything changes. So let's make sure that we are going out there, going out into the world and making things happen. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to the first ever episode of the Growth Assignment Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Hwande, and I feel I can't get it across just how excited and happy I am to be doing this. This is my way of taking action. Yes, there's been delays. I could have done this months ago. But what matters is the fact that I'm doing this. I'm getting started. I'm taking action and cutting that delay towards my goals and ambitions. And I wish the same for you. I wish that you take each and every single thing that I've shared in this episode, that you've realized the value in everything that I've shared, and you take action and you move towards your goals and become that person that you know you ought to become. I wish you well, my friends. I'll see you in the next episode.